Jung's theories about psychoanalysis, the theory of the collective unconscious, which was the main reason why he fell out with Freud. Freud believed that there couldn't be such a thing, that there couldn't be a collective psyche or a collective unconscious. It would mean that all of us are somehow connected in our mind. Jung believed this very strongly. Freud didn't believe it at all. And this was one of the things that caused the major, repercussions of their relationship going sour. The second thing that Jung and Freud, that the second theory that Jung actually really worked hard on and came up with was the theory of archetypes. So what Jung said was that we have the archetypes are again ideas and parts of our mind, unconscious mind, which are partly inherited. They are prototypes in his words, and partly we build on it. So we have archetypes which we've inherited from our ancestors, and then we build up on them. So there are a lot of Jungian archetypes. I won't really go into detail about that because there are many. But the four that he really concentrated on was the persona, the shadow, the anima or animus, and the self. So what he believed was that the persona is actually, it's the person, the part of you that you represent to the world. And it's the social mask that you wear, that you want to show to the world. So it's the part of you that is visible to the outside world. And it's all the, like I said, from the superego, all the thoughts, the perceptions, the dictation of society, of how you must behave, how you must react, how you must sit, how you must talk, how you must eat. All of that is a part of your persona. Part of it is the archetype is inherited from your ancestors. Part of it you build up on during your growing years. The shadow was the archetype that was most fascinating for Jungians, as they call people who follow Jung. The shadow is basically the archetype that is from the unconscious mind. It's from the id. And it's all the repressed ideas, like I said, of the id, the things that you can't face, the feelings that you don't want to face, parts of your mind that are too difficult to comprehend. Those comprise of the shadow. And Jung believed that if in therapy you could make somebody confront their own shadow, confront that part of themselves that they couldn't accept, that person would eventually recover from any sort of mental disorders. The anima or animus was basically, the anima was feminine and the animus was masculine. And Freud believed that everybody had both. So we have an archetype of anima and animus. And it was basically the idea of how women should behave, how men should behave, stereotypical behavior for women, stereotypical behavior for men. Again, inherited partly from your ancestors and partly something that you learn as you observe the women and men around you behave in a certain way. This could explain the theory of, for example, homosexuality and why some men are more feminine and some women are more masculine. So Freud believed that the anima and animus can be different for different people. It's not necessary that if I'm a woman, I have a stronger anima because that's the feminine archetype. I could have an animus and be more masculine. So very logical if you think about, if you want to explain, the differences in how people behave. And finally, the fourth archetype, which was very important for Jung, was the self. So Jung said that the self was everything. It was all of this. It was the archetype that was the most real part of you, and the part that you actually work all your life to meet. So in Jung's words, you couldn't really know yourself completely, and that you had to really go on a journey of introspection and learning to actually come face to face with yourself. And he believed that if you could actually confront and accept all these different parts of you, that then finally you would be in touch with yourself, and that would eventually lead to what he knew as recovery for patients. So his work all along was to help his patients become aware of these archetypes and work with them, and then eventually the patient would accept the self, and then they would recover from anything that they were suffering from. And the final theory of Jung that was very fascinating was the theory of introversion and extroversion. So A lot of people have asked me, I'm an introvert, I don't really like going out, or I'm extrovert, I don't really like staying in. And this lockdown has been very difficult for extroverts. I've heard this a lot. There is a lot of misunderstanding about what introversion and extroversion is. It's become standardized to think that introversion means you like staying at home, you're more of a loner, you're more shy, you like to be by yourself. And extroversion is a person who, or an extrovert is a person who likes to go out, very social, very, you know, uh, talkative, friendly kind of person. This is actually a very big misunderstanding. Jung eventually went on to correct people and correct this misunderstanding of what people thought he meant when he said that there are two types of people, introverts and extroverts. He actually believed that there wasn't, you couldn't be just one. You couldn't be just an extrovert or an introvert, that you had both, and that it was a subjective feeling depending on the situation you were in. So if there was a situation which made you particularly uncomfortable, the introvert in you would become stronger. But if it was a situation that you were very comfortable with and that you really enjoyed, for example, public speaking, some people really enjoyed, but some people hate public speaking. So they would become introverted, or their introversion would take over when they were faced with a situation that they weren't comfortable with. But that same person in a group of 5 friends would be very talkative. So you couldn't explain, he said, you couldn't explain that kind of behavior, difference in behavior, by introversion and extroversion. It was a spectrum, and all of us lie somewhere on both spectrums. So, and it keeps changing according to the way the what sort of situations we face. And one other thing which he's very clearly said in one of his interviews that I've watched, the only interview of Jung that is available, is that it's actually the way we perceive ourselves in the world. So if we do a lot of if we take a lot of information from the external world about who we are, what we are, how we behave, then we're extroverted. But if we take a lot of information from our inner world, for example, who we are, what we are, from ourselves, we ask ourselves and we take only our validation, then we are introverts. So he believed that introverts actually relied more on information coming from within themselves, whereas extroverts relied on information coming from the outside. So you have people who don't really get affected if they are called fat, for example. They don't really care. Um, Most likely they are more leaning towards introversion, so they believe more what they feel. Whereas extroverts would get extremely affected by critical um, opinions of others. So they tend to see the world and see themselves in relation to the world based on the information they're getting from the outside world. And this was one of the key points that Jung stressed on when he said that introversion and extroversion is highly misunderstood. And this is one of the main things that he meant.